the most powerful force for change is love.
Mm.
And if you're taught clinically in the traditional schools of therapy, you're not taught love. And one day I heard this phrase really, really clearly. And this is as I was moving through separation from my spouse and a move and contemplating leaving the LDS faith. I heard very clearly, if you continue to see clients at the rate you are, and I had to actually reduce it quite a bit, you are going to have a stroke.
Oh.
And I knew from my previous life experience when I hear things in my head clairaudiently that if I don't listen, I'm going to get smacked hard. So I was like, I better listen. I was very psychic, but I remember seeing people with that were like walking around, but their feet weren't on the ground.
Have you ever lost your faith, your identity, and your sense of self all at once and then had to rebuild from the ground up? Today's guest has. Then she made it her life's work to help others do the same. Meet Lisa Renda, psychotherapist, healer, and one of the most grounded and insightful people. You do not want to miss her podcast today. Welcome, Lisa.
I
Thank you for
hope.
being on the podcast today. We're so excited to hear your story. So let's start at the very beginning. Just talk a little bit about your childhood, and then I want you to tell us about meeting your ex-husband and marriage and stuff. So let's just start right there.
Yeah, great. Well, I was the youngest of 7 kids in a Mormon family in LA in the late 60s. And my older siblings, the older 3, were what we would call the classic California hippies in the middle of the flower child age. I remember being 4 years old and my mom worked an extensive amount of time, like a lot, and my dad was kind of chronically unemployed. I just remember my dad being gone a
Mm.
lot and not really having, as a little girl, a relationship with either one of them. As an adult, I would say I was raised by wolves because I have 5 older brothers. And I was really raised by my older siblings, as happens in large
Yeah.
families. And yeah, it was a lot like being raised by wolves because the parents were offline. And part of it is the era of the time, like it was a different generation and a
Mhm.
different attitude towards parenting. But a lot of it was just the situation of dysfunction. And I remember a distinct moment when I was 4 and my parents had gone somewhere and I was left in the care of my older siblings and they were out in the backyard having a like a party and smoking pot and trying to get me to smoke it. And I remember distinctly this thought in my mind at 4 years old of like, oh, no one is parenting me. I know that this is bad to do for a 4-year old and I'm on my own. I will have to be my own parent. So that's being a parentified child, right? So from then on, I was like, probably, well, I used to get complimented for being such a mature little girl, which is actually like code for if you like know about mental health, it's code for, oh, you're not really a kid because you're living in a traumatized
You
environment.
had to grow up quick.
Yeah. Um, there are a lot of really great things about growing up in my family and just, a lot of strength came from that. But also the other thing about being a little kid, I w I think as an adult looking back, putting the pieces back together, especially in the last 6 years of my life,
Mm.
I was very psychic. And maybe all children are, I've heard that's true,
Mm.
but I remember seeing people that were like walking around, but their feet weren't on the ground. And I remember one particular time where this person I had a babysitter and she lived across the street. And we went back to my house to get my swimsuit, but we were locked out and couldn't get in the house. And I remember sitting on the front porch looking out at my yard, and there was a man trying to get my attention. He was sitting by a bush. And I said, hey, Mama Cabero was my sitter's name. Mama, like there's a man over there and his feet aren't touching the ground. And and I kept repeating it and she kept trying to see and then she figured out and I could see the look on her face. And that's the first time when I saw the look on her face, I computed this was also around age 4. Oh, I see things other people don't, and I freak people out. And so that's sort of been like this unconscious thing my whole life, which is I have this deep intuitive knowing. I'm very claircognizant, if you know what the clairs are, clairvoyant, clairaudient. These things have been with me my whole life. Um, and that's been the foundation of my spirituality, being raised in an LDS Mormon family, that I always had the gospel according to Lisa as a sidekick to the Mormon doctrine. And so everything that I learned at church, I would put through the lens of what's the gospel according to Lisa. And being raised Mormon, that spiritual aspect was um, being taught that there's a heavenly father that's a real man. And then there's Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. And praying to a heavenly father never really worked for me. I was constantly in search of this connection to a heavenly father. I could connect to Christ spiritually. I was always very much a spiritual seeker. And my whole family really was very spiritual and somewhat intellectual too. My mom was an academic. My dad had an advanced degree, lots of books in the house, lots of focus on education. And, it was just sort of this thing where I was like, I can't relate to a God who's a man in a body. I don't feel it. I'd always pray to the moon because I would feel something from the moon.
Mm.
So that's growing up a little bit. And then raised in that Mormon family, we had eventually moved to outside of Cleveland, Ohio. And that's where most of my growing up took place. And I was raised to, at that point, the youngest of seven, go to college. Um, we didn't have any money. I was very poor growing up. We were like the suburban family that was barely making it in suburbia.
Mhm.
Like we were like ghetto level income, but my parents were able to hold on to a house.
Yeah.
And so because we had a house, we were fitting in with suburbia, but I was always the poor kid. If there was like a school trip or I was involved in a show choir, I was the one getting funded. So there was a lot of like poor shame
Mm.
in my life. And but so the whole thing was go to college, go to the big Mormon university in Utah, get your husband. And very much the attitude in my family's culture was you don't really need an education if you're female, even though we value education, but just be like your sister, just go find a man, get married, and go make babies. That's what you're supposed to do. And that's what I did. I met my husband at Brigham Young University and in my sophomore year. And something happened in my sophomore year, and I don't want to go into all the details, but it was this pivotal, pivotal moment of life change where I felt completely destroyed and probably more trauma than I had ever experienced in my life. And I realized I had been living in this fantasy of a life that I had created that I had support, and I really had none. Like there was evidence after evidence after evidence of like there's these structures. You have this church, you have this family, and they are all like what do you false structures, if you will, like shadows. It's
Mhm.
like they look like they're real things for support and they're just not. And it was horrifying. I felt silly. I was like it was like I was making up that I had support just so I could survive up to that point. And then when the walls came crashing down, I was in an absolute mess. And that's when met my husband in that state.
Ooh.
And I
Mhm.
was 19. We dated longer than most LDS people do. We dated a year and a half before we got married. And things were fine until the fourth year of marriage. And he mentally checked out and we could never really repair. And even though we were married for 34 years, through all of that marriage, there were different stages of growth for me. And I think for him too. I would say there were like three distinct marriages within those 34 years. Um, so that's as far as
Yeah.
is there,
Keep going.
Um, so yeah, we moved to Washington State for him to go to law school, and I did the work part time, support him through law school thing. I had gotten my bachelor's degree, started working in mental health. In college, I was in the mental health field already, and got my first official mental health job with my bachelor's degree. Had my first child, and realized something was not normal with my first child, and there was no help to be found. No one could identify what was different. There was something different about my first child, and I was just an absolute mess. Didn't have any family nearby, wasn't really getting support. Um, Raising this baby, working at the same time, husband in law school, and I was falling apart. And I just could not keep working. I had to quit. And the baby was really difficult to raise. He was constantly not, he wasn't sleeping. He was constantly upset and happy, super hyperactive. Like it was just like raising a monkey. Like, I mean, some kids are, but
Yeah.
very difficult. And and without the support, and my body was just taking a hit. So by the 4th year of marriage, and I had our second baby around that time. No, a little bit after. I think 5 years we were married, 6 years, and I had the second baby. It was again repeating the story, karmic lesson, if you will, or trauma repeating itself, the trauma story embedding itself into me, the story I chose to believe, the story that I was
Mm.
meant to crack the code on, if you will, which is I'm all alone. No one's going to support me. Even when I ask for help, even if I have this mental health training, my degree in psychology and da 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 da. Like, where are the people? Why aren't they showing up? Right. And even in my Mormon community, and being really active in the LDS church, there was a certain level of support, but because my oldest son was different, looked normal, seemed normal, but behaviorally super challenging, we were getting really judged by the LDS
Mm.
community. And then my husband was maintaining that he was a normal kid. He was just stubborn and had bad um, personality or something. And I was like, no, there's so much more, and
Yeah.
nobody's helping me name it or figure it out. Um, so it was rough, and many years went by. We had 4 children total, and by the time my oldest was 15, I finally had a name for what was going on. And we'd been working with several professionals. And I think it was working with all these professionals to try to get help for this kid who was extraordinarily smart, but just behaviorally a nightmare at home. He could behave at school up to a point, socially not very well developed, and just tons of guilt and shame about parenting. And like I'm just reading all the books and doing all the things. And my husband constantly telling me that no, he's just a bad kid. I'm like, he's not a bad. There is
Mhm.
no bad kid. And then people say he's really lazy. I'm like, kids aren't lazy. Like, that's not a thing. Kids love to learn. It's the environment they're put in. It's like lazy's a like that's a useless word.
It's almost like a cop out, right?
I just felt like I just did not I don't believe in laziness. I believe
Mhm.
in people that need help and people that aren't finding that like we're all built for growth. We're
Mhm.
all built for expansion. And if somebody is quote lazy, there's something going on that's blocking their innate God-given gift for expansion.
Yeah.
So finally, by 15, we found two good professionals, a psychiatrist and a psychologist, that said he's probably on the autism spectrum. And at that time, high functioning autism was a term that was very rarely used. And in my abnormal psychology textbook, way back from 1986, there was one paragraph and they
Mm.
called the term Asperger's. And there was only one paragraph on it in my abnormal psychology book. And it's funny that it's even in abnormal psychology.
Right?
It's funny that there's even a book called Abnormal Psychology at this point. So having a label and a framework to work with really made a lot of sense. We were able to make some progress. And finally, my husband jumped on board and said, oh, well, now that he has an official diagnosis, I get it. Like, finally, we were able to work together as parents as a unified team rather than always being at war with each other about how to help this kid.
Yeah.
And because he was the oldest, his behavior, his needs uh, took center stage, and the other children suffered. And I'm feeling that stretched in every direction, trying to help everyone feel seen, heard, loved, and supported. So, and it was never an easy marriage. There was lots of conflict about raising this kid. Um, I kept trying to be the empathetic one, like seeing things from my husband's point of view, but the constant battle was the avoidant and the anxious partner, to put it in the short term, right? He's super avoidant. I'm really anxious. And then there was this other dynamic of domination that came from him that was very subtle and very sneaky, if you will. But it took me years to name it. And now I would call it covert narcissism. It was this thing where he constantly like had to be on top of me and controlling me and not allowing me access to things like finances and information and his inner world. And I was just he constantly kept away from him. And so, and then I'm the ultimate like scrappy survivor kid with trauma syndrome. I'm like, I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna make it work, like trying every angle possible.
I can do hard things.
I just I can do hard stuff. There's a way around this. I figured out how to help my autistic kid. I've raised 4 children. Da, 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 da. I'm like, like just I can do it. It's the LDS thing. It's the youngest of seven. It's having a brain. Like it's trauma, it's all of it. And I'm like, we're just gonna make this marriage work and all these different angles that I put together. And it was always me making that effort, right? And him pulling away or being dragged by the feet. I would say to his credit that he put up with a lot from me, you know, because he was always I was going upstream and he was trying to swim with the stream, which is just let it go, man. Like my family system. So what's wrong with you? Don't you know you just flow with your family system and you just let the ship fly? Excuse my language. But but he put up with a lot. So there was a lot of, temperance and patience on his part for me going really against anything he was about.
And would you say that at that time you had your own trauma that you were trying to navigate while you're parenting these
I feel
children?
like at that point I was looking at it from an intellectual angle, meaning reading the books, doing the self-help stuff. I don't think I had really done any I've done a little of my own counseling, a little bit, but I didn't find therapists that were super helpful. I was really focused on the kids. All of them had mental health issues. Go figure. But the lens now I'm like is like, oh, the two of us and the two people that we were created 4 beings that were highly sensitive people, highly
Mm,
really all of our 4 of our kids are really bright, and all 4 of them feel everything of and there's not a one that's just takes anything, like, lightly and goes, "Oh, that's not a big deal." There's
yeah.
not a one of them is super easygoing. They're all very individual, unique, and different, and just they absorb all the energy from everywhere, and then the family dynamic of, just this low level anxiety all the time, and then when is Big Brother gonna have a fit? And when is Big Brother gonna embarrass us all? And when are we gonna be rejected socially by, our support system and our tribe, if you will?
Mm.
So that's just yeah, all that soup. So, intellect when I say I was handling my trauma intellectually, it was I was getting knowledge and I was informed and aware of a lot of things, but I wasn't in my body. I didn't know about somatics. I
Mhm.
didn't know about embodiment. I didn't know about treatment modalities for healing trauma. In fact, it was before we'd had all this research that said you can heal trauma. Back then, they said you couldn't heal it.
Yeah.
Like people are just going to be traumatized and you just have to help them cope. And I'd heard that in all the mental health training, like, continuing education I took. I was in grad school in 2008, and 2.5 years I was in grad school and getting my licensure and under supervision. I kept hearing, you can't heal trauma at certain levels. There's just going to be symptoms, and you have to help clients with symptom management. And I never believed it.
It doesn't make sense to me either.
No, and when my son was needing all this educational support, the oldest one, um, they would say, "You can't change someone's IQ," and I'm like, "Well, at a basic level, that might be true, but you can help them learn better, and you can change." They're like, "You can't change the brain," and I
Mm.
just in my heart and soul knew that that could not be true, but I couldn't prove it. I just knew it, and now as of 20 years ago, we now have as 20 years ago, we were starting to get the research and the data to prove those things wrong.
The
The
neuroplasticity.
neuroplasticity existed, we can change. There's so much we can change in the brain. There's so much trauma that can be healed,
Yeah.
most of it.
And I think of it too from a like a spiritual standpoint because
Yeah.
I believe in God and I don't think God would ever just throw us down here and be like, "You're on your own."
I believe
And if
that
you're
as
messed
well.
up, I guess you're messed up. But
Yeah,
sometimes you're messed up because you learned to cope with certain things. So if you can learn to cope with your life, the chaotic life you have, you should be able to learn to cope with life in a better, more healthy way.
especially if you
And
don't like it. If you like
yeah,
chaos, then it's fine.
yeah, then
If it makes
you're
you feel good and that like, then stay there. But if you're like, "No, I don't really want this."
yeah,
We're all built for growth. I
yeah.
That's the basic thing is we're built with this innate sense of expansion.
Which is so extremely beautiful,
Yeah.
especially when you've experienced trauma because you get
Yeah.
to know that this isn't me forever. Because again, trauma
Yeah.
teaches you something that's from what you knew before.
Right.
It's teaching you something.
Right.
So if that can happen, it should be able to go back. Maybe not to where you were because now you have this knowledge, understanding, and perspective,
Yeah.
but at least you can go back to a better normal than what it is right now in the chaos and the trauma and the and all the stuff that comes up because trauma, like we talked about before, sits in your body, but it will
Mhm.
come up at random times you never know, and sometimes you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Right.
But knowing this is my favorite part about the human body and the human mind is we can change. It's hard sometimes, and it takes a lot of undoing, and it takes a lot of like almost like vomiting out all the gross to get to the good,
Yeah.
and it hurts and
I
it's
think it
hard.
just takes courage.
Yes.
And I think people shame themselves when they're trying to heal from trauma and they don't have the courage because they know like this is going to take courage and I don't have it.
Yeah.
Um and I don't ever blame anybody for not having enough courage to face their trauma. Because I just think we're all at different places and we're all going to do what we're going to do. And that's part of life. We need people on this planet who don't heal their trauma. Did you
Talk
ever?
about that.
Because they are catalysts for change for the people around them that they're in
Mm,
relationship with.
it's true because you get to see what it looks like if you don't.
Right. And that would be a whole nother podcast. We'd have to talk on that
Okay,
because
we'll have you back.
that really got cemented into with me on a believe it or not on a psilocybin journey I did on my
Mhm.
own. And my parents came through and talked to me and taught me that whole concept. Like
Wow.
I knew it at a certain level from my psychotherapy training. But what my parents taught me from the metaphysical level and spiritual level on that medicine journey was just profoundly life changing
Wow.
about how important it is that we have people and experiences in our life where we feel like you have the potential to change. Why aren't you doing it? Right. But actually, they are fulfilling their life's mission and purpose by not changing.
To show the
Oh,
rest of us how important it is too.
yeah, because there are, like I don't know a lot about science, but I do know that there are chemical agents, and some of them are bases and some are acidic. And you use a base to create like a stable environment, and the acidic things are used to create activation in components of uh, chemicals. And I think of them, and this is, I'm sure this applies to like electricity and other things in science too. It's like there has to be something that stabilizes so that the stuff around it can change. And they're called catalysts, right?
Mhm.
And without having the contrast of somebody who won't change, we would not change. We wouldn't be promoted into it.
It's kind of like, happiness and sadness. Like we always have to have
The
that.
opposing agent.
Yes, because that's what really pushes us to want to make that change, right? Like
Right.
I've felt grief, chaos, and pain. And so I really appreciate the peace, the love, and the calm that I have in my home
Of
because
course.
I've lived with both.
Right.
And this is my favorite side to be on. So I'm going to stay here
You get to have it.
and I will create my world to stay like that because
Yeah.
it's so important to me. Nothing else will ever hijack my peace again
Yeah.
because yeah,
Because you're
I'll set
committed to it.
boundaries and this is where I'm going to live the rest of my days because this is my happy place. This is where I want to be. This was my normal for a while and it took some time and some growth and some
Yeah.
to get here, but I don't ever want to leave this place
And
again.
I can relate to that. And then, raising a child in a family, like this child with autism that I was trying the best to understand without having the proper framework and diagnosis. And it turns out, and as most parents do, you intuitively and instinctively provide what they need, even if you don't have the education.
Yeah.
You just know that they need certain things. But it was a home full of chaos. And it was a home full of difficulty and intensity, lots of high emotion and lots of stress. And despite my best efforts, like to create that peace and calm, like I couldn't control it. Was just going to be what it was.
Yeah.
And I think that when anybody's dealing with things like chronic illness or chronic pain or stuff like that, you just like, you feel pretty stuck with it. But and this is my theme for life, like, and this is what I try to teach my clients is don't ever lose the desire. Don't ever think this is how it's supposed to be. Well, this is your heart speaking. And my heart was always like, I don't want this. I deserve, I claim, I claim my peace. I claim to not live in chaos.
So then let's go back to you're married still.
Yeah.
Let's talk about maybe towards like your kids are grown at this point, right? When you're still married and you moved from Washington.
Yes. Well, our youngest, it was 2017. Our youngest child was repeatedly getting into more and more trouble and needed what I would call constant babysitting. And it got to the point where it was ridiculous. And he was doing some pretty unsafe things and just wouldn't respond to anything. He wouldn't go to counseling. He just wouldn't. He just refused, constant refusal, all kinds of intervention. And we made the decision as parents to put him into a treatment school, and we thought we had chosen really well that treatment school. We thought we chose it with care, little, with what little we knew and how to handle. We just did the best we could. When he was in treatment school, of course, the system is working with us as a family, and then encouraged us to go to counseling, right? Which I don't know. Maybe we had done one or two sessions before, but we this my husband was finally taking it seriously because he could see he had a troubled son, and so we went into therapy, and it was pretty obvious that the marriage was on super shaky ground. And I think the thing that always blew me away was when we were doing the counseling sessions. I would say these are the three or four things, husband, that keep repeatedly happening. And I couldn't be more clear or more kind about how I have boundaries around these things. And this is the effect that these four things have on me. And he'd sit in the counseling session and nod his head. And I could see the therapist going, "Do you get this? Do you get this?" And he'd say he understood. And it was like either he didn't care at all or he didn't compute. And it didn't matter either way.
Yeah.
If it didn't compute and if you didn't care, the effect was the same.
Right.
It was just like, oh. And so that led me on the personal journey of, well, I'm not going to sit in resentment and blame. It is what it is. This is just painful. And am I going to keep exposing myself to this pain over and over and over? And I think that led to the divorce because I was like, listen, it was December. And I think within 1 month, four of those things had happened all over again. And I was like, it's never going to change. This is crystal clear. I can really leave now.
Yeah.
And the consequences of leaving were going to be really high, really, really high financially and socially. And yeah, it was not going to be an easy thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we divorced, we separated in 2018, and I was sort of in a trauma spin out. In 2015, I had had this very, very clear realization, and I had been edging towards it for years that I needed to leave my faith, my religion. But with the kid in addiction, my other son, I had been finishing graduate school. When I was in graduate school, my oldest son, the one with autism, was in the Marine Corps in Afghanistan, serving in the most dangerous, deadly zone of the war. And there just was no space at all. And there was also some financial intensity, that decisions my husband made about finances that were putting us in this extremely precarious, like, it was either going to be like, this is going to pan out, or we're going to be totally financially ruined
Mm.
situation. And he made those decisions without consulting me or involving me at all. And it was pretty like, this was all going on at one time. So
Mhm.
knowing I needed to leave the church, couldn't even register. I had to maintain status quo, because I couldn't lose my social system and support system. And that means I would also lose my family support at some level if I left the church. So that was put on the back burner till life got more stable. And uh then I developed a chronic illness that was unnameable. Of course. Of course. Right?
Like, here's just one more thing in your bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
But you can do this.
I like it that way.
Yeah. You
And
like a challenge, right?
when you look back, after the healing, and you look back at the
Mhm.
story, it's so funny to me now of how, because it's all a game to me now. Like, I look at life like we're in this game. It's a video game that I chose to play, and it's a hell of a hard one. Like, 'cause I'm a high level player. The worse your trauma is,
Competition.
the more
I'm not
shit
gonna
in your
lose.
life, the more that you're a high level player. That's my opinion. And I was like, oh my gosh, look how I set things up for myself, because I was really trying to reinforce the idea of, like, you're going to live in chaos and trauma your whole life, and people are going to abandon you over and over and over again, and you're not going to
Mm.
find support.
The
That's just,
story.
yes, the story, the karmic story. And there's so much evidence. There's
Well,
so
yeah,
much
because 'cause you're
evidence.
looking for it.
Well, but also my training in mental health, by this point, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I know to not believe the evidence. So I'm doing all this stuff to counteract the evidence, but I'm like, oh, but the evidence is really strong. And I'm doing all this stuff to go, but I'm going to train my brain otherwise. I'm going to heal my trauma, da 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 da. Um, and I started doing some trauma therapy. And she started doing EMDR with me. She diagnosed me with complex post traumatic stress disorder, which shocked me. I had no idea. I was just like, I just need a little tune up. And she's like, this is going to take a while.
Yeah. It's not gonna be as quick as you think.
Yeah. And that's when the healing really, really started. And she was a really good therapist. And part of what I love about my background, education, and my family story is the never give up attitude taught me to find really good professionals. And working with professionals who couldn't really help my son or my kids very well, yeah, I found one or two along the path, but most of them were mediocre at best.
Mhm.
And um, that taught me that's part of what drove me into mental health, is like, if I'm going to be a really good therapist, the
Yeah.
best that I can be, because there's so many mediocre
Yeah.
ones.
I know, because I've experienced it,
Yeah.
right?
And then I also saw who the good ones were.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm going to be like that person, you know. And so yeah, it's been really a fun ride coming out of the deeply ingrained evidence. Like, if you ask anybody for all the evidence of, like, yeah, you I don't know why you got dropped in the planet this way, and why these circumstances were so deeply embedded for hard things, but the crowning crucial point was, son just got out of Afghanistan, survived, but he's got PTSD. You know, two kids aren't talking to me, one's in addiction. I've got this chronic illness, it's unnameable, nobody can diagnose. The marriage is a mess, the finances are about to crash. Like, every vice grip you could put on a life, right? And what broke through that? I can't remember. Oh, well, the chronic illness, getting a diagnosis for the chronic illness helped. It was the slow w- it- through all of that. The only thing I had was the bit of spirituality as I understood it, my connection to God, source, listening to my intuitive knowing,
Mm.
and then the slow, slow, slow unraveling of going to the next thing to heal and the next thing to heal and the next thing to heal. And it just took time
Yeah.
and listening, deeply listening.
So during that time, what was the one thing that when you kind of started to make that shift
Hmm.
that kind of caused that cascade effect where you're like, I'm going to head down this road till I get to the point where I feel like whole again? Or was that even your thought?
Well, I just had started feeling better and better because I was getting more and more of an understanding of my trauma. And I don't
Mm,
even like to say my trauma, of the trauma, what trauma lived in my body.
mm,
And I had gotten trained in EMDR as a therapist, and I had to learn some things from that training and then realized that EMDR is not the most effective method for a lot of people. And so I went further and got trained in somatic experiencing,
mm.
and that's when everything got a little freaky because with using those two modalities in the therapy room, I was starting to see people's deceased friends and ancestors in the therapy session and hear what they were saying, and then trying to figure out, what do I do with this information? Most therapists, the longer their therapists, do become highly intuitive, and that's no secret. But this was a whole different level. And I was like, well, do I mention that I'm seeing grandma and she has a message? Like, trying to determine all that. And then the healthier I got with healing my trauma, I didn't know how to just explain the phenomenon. But what was happening to me in therapy sessions when I was uh, providing them for clients was I was feeling completely physically drained,
Mm.
like, absolutely, like, I would be like, "I don't understand. I just did 3 sessions. I used to do 5 or 6 in a row. I can only do 3, and I feel like I have to go to bed." And, this went on for several years, and I thought, "Is this the illness that I'm dealing with? Is this, the illness is pretty well controlled. What is this? I don't know what's going on with me." And one day I heard this phrase really, really clearly, and this is as I was moving through separation from my spouse and a move and contemplating leaving the LDS faith. I heard very clearly, if you continue to see clients at the rate you are, and I had to actually reduce it quite a bit, you are going to have a stroke.
Oh.
And I knew from my previous life experience, when I hear things in my head clairaudiently, that if I don't listen, I'm going to get smacked hard. So I was like, I better listen. And I was scared and I didn't know what to do. And the divorce was impending. So here I am, not able to see clients hardly at all. I did it like a few. I would see a few just to keep the business going.
Mm.
And then I had to support myself because I was getting divorced. What I was going to get in alimony was not going to support me. And I was at the lowest of the low, and I had also decided to leave the church, and all of my friends went poof.
Mm.
I had one friend left. I knew no one. I had moved to a new city here to St. George. No friends here. It was hard to make friends here at the beginning because most people were LDS. And I was like, this is really sad. The people I'm socializing with the most with are my clients. That's my social life. Something's off with that. I mean, I wasn't socializing outside of session, but I'm like, that's my whole social life is sessions.
Yeah.
And so a drastic change had to happen. And I was in my new house after my divorce in a new neighborhood where I knew no one. I chose to live rural, which is very isolating, but I chose what I chose for a really good reason. And it was like hitting ground zero total destruction of my life. I
Mm.
didn't even know who I was. I was just so lost. And I decided to give myself a birthday present because I thought I have tried everything to heal from burnout that I can think of. And I have to work. And this is where my skill set is that's going to make the most money. I don't know what to do. And nothing sounds fun because I was just so burned. Everything was just gone. No energy. Just like everything was gone. So I decided for my birthday, I'd never done this before, to contact uh what do you call it? Psychic mediums. And one was a woman with an MBA, with a business degree. She was also an executive coach. So she helped people, she coached people, but she also used her intuitive gifts. And she was involved in something called human design, if you've heard of that.
Mhm.
And a month later, I had a psychic reading with just a basic psychic medium. And really, what I was searching for was I didn't want to talk to dead people or anybody in my life who had died. Or I was really like, help me. What am I not seeing? I've tried every angle to heal from this burnout and nothing's working. And I don't even know if I have to have a new career, what to do. I don't know how to make it work. I don't know where to start. And both of them gave me the same advice and both said the same thing. They said two things. I see you on a stage with a headset talking to people. I was like, ew, gross, motivational speaker. You know? The other one said, I see you talking to people from all over the world. Uh, yeah. And they both said this advice. They said, whatever you choose to do, if like just go get a job that sounds fun. You have to do something that sounds enjoyable. And I was like, there's nothing. But I'd start looking through like job ads. And the one job that sounded fun was to drive the shuttle bus in Zion National Park. I was like, so here's this educated woman professional. I go get my CDL. And of course, in the interview for the job, they're like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I'm burned out. I'm tired of psychotherapy. And it was probably the best move I have ever made to just drive that bus, not have to worry about seeing
Mhm.
clients. There was all these other challenges, but to be in the park and in nature every day, I learned so much. And then during that time period, from the moment that I left the church and moved to southern Utah, a lot of metaphysical events began happening to me that I could not explain. And were getting louder, if you will. And I had no one to talk to about it. And I didn't know who to turn to because I was not a woo-woo person. And I wasn't someone who read books on the metaphysical. I did have like a secret obsession with mediumship. So I'd watch TV shows about mediumship and ghosts. Not like ghosts for the scary part, but ghosts because I was really interested in the afterlife.
Mm.
So I would study anything near death related or mediumship related. And I wasn't even that obsessed with it. I was just, it's my little side like drug. So the job in the park was very, very healing on many levels. And I think there is a book about that. I call it The Monk on the Bus. So far, that's the title, about how that job healed me.
I think that's beautiful because we never know how or where it's gonna happen,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's something as simple as, "What do I wanna do that sounds fun?"
Yeah. It
And
was a crazy job and it was so fun and hard sometimes.
but
Yeah.
then you get to talk to people outside of work
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, and I wasn't psychotherapy, I
That's what I
wasn't
mean,
doing the
outside of your
heavy load of
yeah.
carrying somebody else's stuff, and I'm starting to experiment with energy and moving energy, and I started to understand my own innate power to move things metaphysically, and so I would play with that in the park, and this is where I would say the full witch came on. I don't call myself a witch, but I was like, I was doing witchy things without even knowing about witchy things. And I would experiment and I would like go, hey, I want to see two snakes this week on the road, but I don't want to hurt them. And one of them I want to be a rattlesnake. And a rattlesnake sighting in the park is, it's not that common, especially on the road. And sure enough, I would see a gopher snake and a rattlesnake on the road, and I'd be able to stop the bus and show everybody on the bus, look who's on the road. I would call in other animals and I started to talk to my deceased parents and I'd say, "Hey mom, I want you to show up as a yellow and black butterfly." I don't know the names of them. This one that it is in southern Utah. It's not super common. It's more in the wooded, more pine
Yeah, yeah.
areas. But
Foresty
I'd
area.
say, "But I just want you to come really close to the windshield of the bus, not just be out there." And sure enough, and sometimes it would happen with certain thoughts I would have in my head or songs in my head, and it would be like a distinct message from my mom, and so I was like, "This magic thing is weird." And I would be like, "Okay, so I'm coming out of Mormonism, and the last thing I wanna do is get into something culty or to feel like I'm using confirmation bias." But I'm like, "But this is all confirmation bias. Like, I'm looking for it, so it's happening. That's what I'm creating." And I was like, "But it's fun." I was like, "I'm just gonna keep playing with it." Right? And, over time, I started to meet people and situations would occur where my tribe emerged and my healing really started happening.
So let's go into that. I want to hear
Yeah.
all about the healing side because you've talked a little
Yes.
bit about what you've done to heal,
Yeah.
but I know there's a lot more to
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
to get to where we are today.
Right.
So let's talk about the healing side. And then also I want you to kind of sprinkle in your understanding of the healing as a therapist with
Mhm.
your own healing from so we can see both sides of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. A big chunk of it was done when I started seeing that therapist, after I got the chronic illness diagnosis, and she's an EMDR therapist, so we did a lot of EMDR. She's the one that first diagnosed me with complex PTSD. So I did a large chunk of trauma processing with her, and I think I came out of that with a lot more self-compassion and a bigger lens for what I was doing. Then, when I started doing my somatic experiencing training, I had to find a supervisor. We have 30 hours of supervised training we have to do. And I found one of the co-founders of Somatic Experiencing Institute, which is his name is his last name is Gottlieb, and he happened to live here in St. George. And I was like, and I looked at his background and his, everything on his website. I'm like, this guy has done it all and knows he's a very experienced guy. And I started working with him in therapy and learned so much from him. But I was also sharing metaphysical with him. I go, all this stuff is happening to me and I don't know what to make of it. And his he used to drive me crazy. I go, what do I do with this? And he goes, you don't do anything with it. I'm like, bullshit. like I'm like, this person showed up in my room who's dead. I'm like, I don't have to do with a dead person in my room. He'd be like, you don't do anything with it. I'm like, no, I don't believe it. I was like, I'm determined. There's a reason why this is happening to me. But he served a purpose and he was really useful because he kept helping. He really helped me with the masculine wounding and the patriarchal wounding of the religion I was in and the worldview I had been raised in. And it was beautiful foundational work. And he also helped me work a lot with my body and the somatics. So I started getting really aware of somatics and how to move trauma through the body somatically. So that was huge and a great foundation for the next level of healing. So through that period of time, after I was divorced and when I left the Mormon church, I'm like, okay, now I can explore something I've been really curious about from from a research perspective as a provider, which was psychedelics and psychedelics for healing trauma. And I was like, okay, I want to do a journey to see if this is something I actually want to get trained in. Is this why all this metaphysical stuff is happening to me? Am I supposed to learn more about this other world that I'm a little afraid of? And do I want to get trained as a psychedelic therapist? At the time, only Colorado had it legal. Oregon was kind of in the, it might be legal, it might not be in Oregon. I'm like, if I do that, it's going to change my life dramatically because I'd have to move to Colorado to
Yeah.
be licensed in it
Yeah.
or practice there. I was like, I don't know, that's asking a lot. And I did find a provider from Colorado and did a journey, my first journey. And the doors of life have been blown wide open ever since. Like that
Mm.
journey was so revelatory to me. And the integration of it was so huge. Basically, I saw my whole life plan laid out. And I saw visions of so many things and it was just unbelievable stuff. And the integration of that was the biggest part of like allowing myself to believe that these things could happen and be possible and true. And and then every time I get into doubting them, just going, no, this is who you are. This is your destiny and this is your path and this is what you planned for yourself. And so allowing yourself to believe in something so illogical, unbelievable, something that didn't seem founded on, what was current reality, but going, oh, I saw the long range picture. Now I've got it. Because at the point that I did the journey, there's a point in life when you live life long enough. And I was in my mid 50s, right? I was probably 57 at the time of the journey. Um, you've accomplished a lot of your life goals. My kids were all established and doing well, and I'm a grandma and loving grandmothering, and like life is other than healing from the divorce and finding out who I was and being lost and having no clue what I was going to do with my future.
Other than that,
Other than that, like I had accomplished so
yeah.
much. So it was kind of hard to have like a life goal and path. Like I was just like, I don't even know what my purpose is. Like
Mm.
what, you know. So having this thing laid out for me in this psychedelic journey, it would have been so easy to just go, well, that was drugs. It felt good.
Or that would be nice, but
And it felt
yeah.
good and I got some useful things from it. But yeah, we're not gonna go down that road of believing all that stuff. But every time I would go into doubt, I actually found a mentor after that, and that's another story. But I've been looking for a teacher for a couple of years to help me with a very loud metaphysical knocking, or I would say fist fights I was having. Yeah, I'm like, I needed someone to teach me about this metaphysical world that was emerging for me, and I had no one to talk to about it. And I did find my teacher. So my teacher would guide me through this. And it's funny because she, at the time, she was 28 and I'm 57. Like, so funny to me. Um, but this woman was just teaching me about how to hold the vision, how to work with what the medicine presented to me. And I'd only done that one journey and I had not done any other psychedelics till that was July of 2023. And then the next time I did psychedelics was December of 23. And from that moment forward, that's been my life path is I'm going to be providing this medicine. I'm going to be training in this. I am a healer. I'm going to be guiding my path towards a whole different way of healing people from trauma, which involves somatic experiencing. It involves energy movement, energy healing. It involves all these intuitive gifts that are coming on board for me,
Mhm.
and then it involves the knowledge about the plant medicines, and that's the path I've been on. And so my practice is now shifting to more of a coaching practice, and I'm happier than I've ever been. Relationships in my life are coming forward, but I had no friends. I lived in total isolation for like 3 years.
Oh.
I knew no one. I'm just in this little hole, and the house I moved to is in this beautiful place. So I would just go in my hot tub every night, look at the stars and the moon, and just go, "I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm good." Like, "Thank you, nature." And then I'd go drive my bus job, and I'd be in the park with beautiful nature, and I'd
Yeah.
play my little magic games. I'm like, "I'm good. I'm good. I'm good."
Nature's amazing though, because I
Yeah.
I feel like nature heals me a little bit every single time
Oh, yeah.
I take time to just be
Yeah.
present in nature. I notice the same kind of shifts for myself. I know
Yeah.
not everybody's like that, but
No, but
gosh,
it's an essential for some people.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's how I so you talked about how you would do therapy sessions and it would be like completely draining. Sometimes a
Yes.
podcast is like that too
Oh,
because
right.
you're completely absorbed in the conversation. And nature is the one way that I can,
I love
like,
that.
reset myself
Well
because I get
well,
overstimulated.
I think that's I also don't I would offer to you, just from meeting you the first few minutes here and my intuitive read, was you're an alchemist. So you're not just being overstimulated, you're actually taking the energy in the room, moving it through your body, but you're not maybe aware or educated enough about it yet to know that you need to transmute it and shift it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yes, you're going out and clearing it by being in nature, which is beautiful. But like it the more I'm learning about how to do that, the healthier I get. It's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay, I really get what's happening here." But we're not taught about those things. There's not a lot of
No.
books about it.
No.
There's no people really talking about it, but I'm
And
like,
what I know is only from my own personal experiences,
"Right,
and then kind of playing with how do I protect myself and my energy and
right."
not just absorb
So
everyone
it's
else's.
gonna be a little it's gonna be that, but it's gonna be more.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot more involved with it, so you're gonna feel actually rejuvenated and expanded.
Yeah.
But I'm just learning that as well. Like, I'm like, it's all making sense now. But when I was first working with my teacher, she would tell me all this stuff. I was, this is weird. Are you sure? I don't know if this works. you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, over time, just playing with it and figuring it out.
So earlier earlier you talked about how your son was autistic, but,
Hmm.
in the pre-interview, you told us that your husband was also autistic.
Right.
How did you find that out?
Well, when my son got diagnosed, um, there was a part of me that goes, okay, this explains my husband's behavior. This explains why it's been so hard, which was a huge revelation, which kept me hanging on to the marriage longer, actually, you know, because I was like,
He's like, "Oh,
oh,
it's not
the
his fault."
empathy.
Yeah.
um, and it was confusing, but so I was always, then I was trying to figure out, is this autism or is this just being a dickhead? I'm sorry, but sometimes you can only use that language just to let the energy out. And I was like, it's not for me to know all the time.
Yeah.
What there is for me to know is not what I was learning through that process, which is so liberating, was I used to try to label something to make sense of it so I could understand it. And all if other people.
Mhm.
All I really needed to understand was the impact on me and what my how I felt about me. Stay in my own place, be with me because it's I was self-abandoning all the time by being so concerned about why somebody else was doing what they were doing. It was a way to not be with me. It was a way to not be in my body. It was a form of dissociation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you think that leaving that relationship after you understood all of the things about the the subtle narcissism and the autism and
Mhm.
the like it's not going to change because you mentioned that like
No.
he would say I'm going to change and then nothing would
Well, he would for a
change.
few weeks. Like that's what would keep me hanging on. Like that was the like, can I use bad language? Like, that was the fuckery of it.
Yeah.
Like what when you lose your mind and you feel the chaos, and I call it mind fuckery.
Yeah.
The mind fuckery would be like he could actually change the behavior for a while. We'd be doing great. And then it would be like it never existed, or he'd act like he couldn't remember what we talked about and
Yeah.
and agreed to.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, am I crazy? So
Yeah.
that would keep me hanging on longer. And I think that does happen in a lot of narcissistic relationships where
Yeah.
there's one person that's very narcissistic. It's this tug of war they play. They kind of get off on it a little bit. And believing that when you get away from it and believing that they actually get off on it is a hard thing to accept because you feel like you've been so scammed. Because
Yeah.
you're like, I'm intelligent. How could this happen to me?
One little one little thing at a time, right? Because if it all came at
Yeah.
once, we would
Yeah.
never stay.
That's true, exactly, and it's a little cat and mouse kinda game, and, um, I've had a lot of training with narcissistic behavior because I'm an addiction specialist, and we have to know how to sort out the addiction from the narcissism, because that's really important for treatment, and, I also I'm a specialist in betrayal trauma, so sex addiction and betrayal trauma kinda go hand in hand, and, um, what I've learned from my narcissistic training about narcissism is how much they actually need the dopamine hit
Mm.
of messing with you. It's actually a high.
Like fishing.
It's like a little bit, yes, it's like a little bit of a high. And when I work with clients in these dynamics and I start to explain this, I go, I know this is going to be really hard to believe, but I'm going to keep repeating it. And you don't have to believe it, but I'm going to keep repeating it. This is a way they got high off of you. This is a way they got a dopamine hit. This was a charge for them. And I go, and usually a lot of times narcissistic partners will seek out a partner who is highly educated and really smart and very capable. It's usually a male female dynamic, but not always. But the narcissistic partner, if they can get this smart person who's really capable to be dominated, oh, that's such a kick. That's such an amazing
Mm,
high. Look what I did. I got somebody who's really smart to just fall apart and turn into crumbles. Look what I can do. That's that power high, right?
yeah. So have you ever experienced somebody who has a lot of those narcissistic tendencies to really want to change and actually create change and get better?
I not personally, but I do know of people in my field. So I'm a certified sexual addiction therapist with
Mhm.
the International Institute of Trauma and Addiction Professionals. So I go to their conferences, I get trained by them. And there are some people in that field that would say openly, 2 or 3 people, and they may have platforms. I can't say off the top of my head, but I know they'll say, "I'm a reformed narcissist." Like, I would say I'm a narcissist. I have these traits and tendencies, and I'm gonna be really open and honest about my transparency about my process of staying in the healing place, right? There are a few people like that. And I do have a girlfriend actually who's done 12 years of therapy, couples counseling with her husband. They just finished 2 months ago. And I'm like, she would probably say her husband is narcissistic and they are staying together and he's constantly working on it. And there are people who are aware and keep kind of working at it. But his awareness is his ability to shift that. I've only know her perspective. I
Yeah.
couldn't speak to his, but it's learning to find safety in that dynamic. Some people can't.
Yeah. And do you think that narcissism is something that's a learned behavior, or do you think it's a taught behavior, or do we even
I think
know?
that's a multi-layered question, and I'm not the expert on that.
Okay.
And there is that Dr. Ramani, who's the expert on narcissism.
Mhm.
She's the most popular on social media
I've
platforms.
seen her.
Yeah, she'd probably be the one to consult on that or some other research that she presents. My take on it, just from my thumbnail sketch of the review, is that I think like if there's that dark triad, the Machiavellianism, the antisocial behavior, and the narcissism, I think that could be a combo of learning and brain, how the brain is just comes into being. So, a lot of antisocial people have brain issues.
Mm,
It's common. The brain is not a typical brain. There, some level of empathy cut off or something like that. So there is some biology involved. But I am of the opinion that everything is a combination of everything.
yeah.
There is no simple answer. Uh,
It's it's childhood, your upbringing, it's the things you experienced during your upbringing, but
right,
it's also how you saw everything too, because
right,
I've learned about myself too that, like, I view the world very different than a lot of other people do. Just from talking to people, I've
yeah,
gathered that about myself.
right,
But I'm fascinated by people because I think people are are just incredible the way that each individual person can live life so differently, even if, like, I have 12 siblings. We were all brought up like in a very similar household, but we
yeah,
all have very different personalities. We all see
yeah.
the world very differently.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's
I
amazing.
love
But I
it.
think we talked about this before, and I think it's by design. We have to
Uh-huh.
have all these different personalities, all these different traits, all of
Right,
these different perspectives
right.
in order for us to really, like, see, what do I want? Do I
Yeah.
want to be, like, over here? Do I want to be over here? Where on the spectrum of,
And there's choice involved in all
yeah,
of those things. Like, back to your question, I could speak to my ex-husband, and I really think genetically there is a predisposition towards autism. You can look back in the family line and see it so clear.
yeah.
Um, so you take that and you combine it with his dad, that's his dad's side. And then you combine that with his mama and her trauma history, and two parents raising him with one with a severe trauma history and the other one with like autism, right? And then the cultural times that they were brought up in. And there's addiction, like a history of addiction, and they're both of my his parents, not in his parents, but their parents. So you take those factors and the biology and the soup he was raised in,
Yeah.
and it is the perfect place to have autism and narcissism emerge. It was his coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's fascinating all the different ways things happen. But the bottom line, and I guess if I could really reiterate this for people on this podcast, would be my biggest learning has been to be, and this is coming out of Mormonism as well, and it's like my new favorite thing in life is explanation can only get you so far.
Mhm.
Having education is helpful, and explaining things takes you so far. At a certain level, for your healing to really heal, you have to be okay with unfamiliarity. You have to be what I call a cosmic explorer. You have to surrender. You have to not know and be okay with not
Mm.
knowing, and play with not knowing, and learn to be safe in the not knowing. And a lot of trauma survivors, and people who've had intense trauma, want all the information possible, and then their coping style is, I gotta know, I gotta know, I gotta know. And you know that you're really on the other side of your healing and on the path to expansion when you're like, I don't know, and it's okay. Ah! Like, and I'm uncomfortable, and I'm okay being uncomfortable. I'm still
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
How do I know I'm safe?
I like that.
Yeah.
'Cause I do very much like to try to understand people, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I think there's gonna be instances, well, I know because already from my experiences, there's scenarios that no matter how well you explain it to me, no matter how, like, laid out in my face it is, it's gonna be hard for me to understand still why somebody does what they do. And I
Yeah.
think that comes from my own perspective, like,
Yeah.
there's things that I would never do that people do every single day.
Right. There is a man that I follow on social media. He's very well known, and the label you use for him is called polymath. I'm not sure exactly what that means. It just means super smart guy who knows a lot about everything
Okay.
and has the ability to communicate it and influence a lot of people. His name is Robert Edward Grant. And one of the things I've heard him say recently on a social media platform was, truth is the combined sum total of all of the opinions you can gather. He's like, there is no ultimate truth. It's only this person's version, that person's version, this person's version, the version, da, 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 da. Like, if all the different versions, they're all part of the truth. And I was like, oh,
'Cause then that's where you get to
mind
be
blowing.
okay with not knowing because you'll never know
Exactly,
because
because you
there's
will
so many.
never have the
Yeah.
truth of anything completely, and that is how the universe works. We're not to have an abs and I remember learning in grad school about, like, postmodern theory, which is there's no absolute truth, is everything's a construction, right? And this is kind of this postmodern thought, meaning like we are everything is contextual, everything is added layer upon layer upon layer of new information, so we're never at the truth.
That's fun.
It's very uncomfortable if you're raised Mormon, especially. And some other faiths are like that too.
So you talked about the Dark Knight in your bio. Will
Yeah.
you explain that to us a little bit?
I think, well, people in the spiritual communities always talk about having a dark night of the soul. It's also a term that's used a lot in theological studies. So, I have some friends that have studied theology in university, and I guess one of the things, if you're in theological seminary, like it's like almost like a required course, but it just happens naturally that somebody who's a spiritual seeker is going to go through a period of time where everything is, you're used to having God with you, you're used to having answers from your higher power, You're used to being connected to your higher power, and then it just stops. And your faith is totally in question. Your transcendental philosophy of where life feels great, and you have this source of energy that feels beyond you, is inaccessible. And I've had a few of those. So the first one came, I there were 7 years between, I think, ages 30 and probably 36. No, it was probably 34, 33. No, it was about 34, 35. Because I remember it ended with an accident that I had. But I was in 7 years of questioning whether I should leave my marriage the first time. And I'm so used to getting answers from my spiritual source, and I was getting no answer on that. That was like a dark night of the soul of one sort or another, where I was like, God, I'm so pissed at you. Like, I am just so angry that you're not answering this question. And I've been so patient and I'm getting nothing. And I will never not believe in you, but like, I don't think I need to keep these commandments anymore. Like, I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm getting nothing back. That's the place I was at. That was one dark night of the soul. And then another was the time period that I talked to you about where my son was deployed. I
Mm.
broke an ankle. I'm finishing graduate school. Our house got flooded. That finance, like everything you can think of under the sun was just like intense. So that was another one. And then the third one has been this most recent one where this total life redo. We're going down to ground zero. I have no friends. I don't know anybody. I have no social support. My family thinks I'm possessed by an evil spirit. Like I'm like all these metaphysical things are happening. I don't know who I am. I don't know what my purpose in life is. And I don't have a career anymore. Like,
Yeah.
like, ah.
Just
So
times of real dark confusion, it sounds like.
yeah, it's just of not having a direction, a
Yeah.
purpose, and you're usually I don't think it happens to people who aren't spiritual seekers. So it happens to people that are on the path to knowing God truly. And I would say one thing I can say since I was a tiny little girl, and this is probably, I believe in reincarnation. This is probably how my soul has incarnated over and over again lately, has been my one true path always has been, I just want to know God. I
Mm.
just want to know God more deeply and deeply and deeply, like more and more and more. That's my soul mission in life. That's the only thing I really want ever.
Yeah.
And so the dark night is you don't get to know God right now.
Mhm.
Like you're taking that's my life source. That's where I feel fed,
Yes.
and that there's a cutoff.
Yeah. Mm. That stirs something in me. That's interesting that the
Mm,
way that you say that, because I think we've all I mean, I know I've experienced that before in my life too.
yeah.
But the beautiful thing that I've found for myself is on the other side is this beautiful,
Oh,
bright awakening.
yeah. Something new
It's
emerges.
almost like the contrast we've been talking about this whole time. Like we have to know what it feels like for it to be gone in order to
Yes.
really, truly appreciate when it's there.
Yeah. For real. And usually it's even there more
Yeah.
fully available.
More clear,
Yeah.
more, yeah, yeah. Just to really, really see and hear and understand it at a level that's for me deeply personal,
Right.
where I could not explain to you what it is for me. That's how
That's
deep
how
it
it's
is.
supposed to be.
Yeah.
I was listening to something this morning. It was repeating the Tao is like the Tao that you speak is not the Tao. Meaning, like if you're explaining the spiritual experience, then it's not the experience.
Yeah.
That's not how it is.
Yeah.
There's no explanation.
Because it's personal and it's supposed
It's
to be
and there's
personal.
these experiences, especially when you start to move into such transcendental experiences, deep spiritual experiences. There's not language. It's imagery. It's feeling. It's emotion. It's energy. It's
Yeah.
symbolism. And there's not words don't work.
Yeah. Because it's a feeling.
Mhm.
It's that.
It's a frequency and a vibration.
Mhm. Yeah. Energy
Yeah.
from the ultimate source of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really beautiful because I think it helps you to realize like your experience can be completely different than anybody else and no one will ever understand it.
Mhm.
That doesn't take away from its worth and its value for you though.
No, but it also reinforces your own value to yourself and expands your self-love because you're not looking to get you can't get validated by anybody
No.
else. There's no possible way.
No, but I feel like it's validation from source. It's a validation from
Yeah.
God that he hears me and knows me and sees me,
Yeah.
and he's gonna give me a special gift that's just for me.
Yeah. That only you can understand your way.
Yeah, but it speaks so loudly because it is just for me,
Yeah.
and it's said how I need to hear it, and it's felt how
Exactly.
I need to feel it,
Yes.
and it's seen how I need to see it.
Right. And it also gives you your own unique sense of purpose and mission.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. So, if someone's listening right now who's in the middle of their own dark night, their faith gone or their identity shaken, not sure who they are anymore,
Mhm.
um, what's something that you could say to them that you would want them to know?
I don't know that this is going to sound great. Try to believe in the phrase that you're exactly where you need to be and everything you choose and do is exactly what it's supposed to be. And when I first heard that, that sounded crazy to me. But once you start to move through these things, it all starts to make sense. Um, I also like to ask the question, and this is from a spiritual lens, and this may not work for everybody, but I love asking the question, why did my soul choose this? My
Mhm.
soul chose this. So, what is my soul trying to teach me?
Yeah.
You could get mad at your soul and go, this is really awful. I hate you right now. Like I do believe in that idea that we do construct our
Yeah.
experience. Our higher self does.
And shifting that perspective instead of like, why is this happening to me?
Right. It's
Saying,
happening.
why is this
Why did I
happening for
choose this
me?
for
Yeah.
myself?
Yeah.
And then there's another phrase that says that the universe is not working, things aren't happening to you, but or for you, but through you. Things are happening through you. And a lot of times when we're in those places, we feel like we don't really want to there's no words for it. It's hard to discuss with people. We feel like we're not a good thing that we're really all about, especially as Americans, is being productive and useful to other people of service. And when we're in that place, we don't really feel like we're of service and we don't feel productive a lot of times, or we feel like just bleh. But please remember that there is energy and things moving on that you cannot see that you will see later, that you are
Mhm.
actually doing some beautiful, beautiful work, that there are ways to get perspective on, um, that the pieces will make sense and you'll see all the beautiful work that happened during your dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
But you won't know till later.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to trust the
So
process.
I think really what they're designed for, it's like a beautiful I would say it's actually an honor to be in the dark night of the soul. It's like a sacred honor because it's a pat on the back of like, "Yay, you've moved from level 3 of the video game to level 5, and guess what? At level 5, you have the distinct honor of going through a total shit show
Well, yeah,
because you
because
can handle it,
the beauty's always on the other side of
because you
that
are
though.
now ready to integrate the
Yeah.
knowledge that you're gonna gain through it and the experience and the awareness.
Yeah, just I like how you said that because just from doing this work that Dee Dee and I do,
Yeah.
I've seen we started one place and we're in a completely different place. Still
Um
along the same lines, but like the growth that has to happen so that the company and the business can grow so that we can really help other people. Like I have to change so much in order to keep doing what I do because
Oh,
I'm being
challenged.
challenged to grow to prepare me to be who I need to be for the work that I need to do.
Right.
And everything that we do, we pray because we know that
Mhm.
God is the designer and He's going to help us
Yeah,
create this beautiful thing to help as many
love
people as we
that.
possibly can. So it's been it's been interesting to see the things that He is challenging me to do so that I can show up how He needs me to show up.
That's surrender.
Yeah.
I love that.
But it's like it's been this like aha for me too,
Yeah,
because through all of this, there's been that a little bit of that dark night,
Yeah.
But I still go back because I'm like, I know this is for a purpose. I know I'm being refined into who I need to be so that I can be that person for those people that need me and for myself, but also,
Oh, hope. I just want to speak to that. Thank you so much for sharing that because, like, what I've learned in the last 6 years on this journey of this, like, I would say super high speed awakening process, if you want to call it that, for me is, I went from no friends, like literally, I had
yeah,
one friend and she lives in Washington State. And I was even considering that friendship needed to taper off because of what she was going through. And I couldn't handle what she was going through at the time. There's just bad energy for a bit.
yeah,
She's in a different place now. But like from going to one friend and then like it feels weird, but all my friends now are new people who are going through these processes. And what we're all discovering, and I have this beautiful support system now. And what we're all discovering together as we talk and share and support each other is that the more you expand, the more the challenges come more intensely and resolve more quickly. So you and this goes to this is a mental health like uh neurophysiological thing that I don't know who came up with the terminology. I think might be Peter Levine's work from trauma, the window of tolerance. If you know that concept of the window of tolerance, it really kind of that the more you heal from trauma, the more your window of tolerance for emotional expansion and
mhm,
emotional expression, you 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 have a greater depth and capability to feel it all in every range of it. And so the more that you're able to your capacity to feel the highs and the lows, the more you heal, the quicker you move through it. And that's when your energy shifts and you start to like, walk in a room and you've actually changed people with your energy
mm,
because you're doing these things. Like so I would offer that perhaps part and I don't mean to say this in a um egoistic way. But I perhaps why you were so emotional this morning is maybe that's how you are before every podcast. But maybe it's because of the synergy of the three people here and our energy fields
yeah,
connecting before we even met, which created intensity,
yeah,
right?
totally
Emotion and
possible.
energy to
Yeah.
move through, right?
But I like that you say that you can have these high highs and low lows because
Yeah.
I feel that, but it's not like I think because
It's not
I've
craziness, like, we can see that in somebody who's mentally unstable, but
right,
there's a fine line.
right. Right, and I've felt mentally unstable at times
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
However, this is different because this feels like I'm not trying to control it all anymore.
right.
I think for
Yeah,
me, that's what it is. It's like I'm taking the brakes off on the way down so
yes,
that I can just fly down. But then
yes.
if I fly down, I'm going to fly back up because didn't use the brakes, so I don't have to
So
try so hard to get back
beautiful.
up. So I'm releasing the brakes to let the lows come because the high is coming too.
Yeah.
So when my daughter was born, she was born 16 weeks premature. She weighed
Oh,
a pound and a
wow.
half when she was born. She's our miracle. But through that time, it was really hard
Yeah.
going to the hospital every day, leaving a 2-year old at home.
Oh, yeah.
But that's when I started to have this thought: what am I supposed to learn right now? Because there's always going to be a lesson through the hard times.
Mhm.
So instead of being like mad at the lesson that I'm learning, I've shifted to what is the lesson that I need to learn?
Yeah.
Because I want to learn it fully because I don't want to do this again.
Think of it as a gift, though, instead of
Yeah.
work. Don't
Well,
think of it
yeah,
like
it
work,
is
think of it
though.
as a gift,
It is
Yeah.
though, because it's always something beautiful. It's always
Mhm.
something expanding. It's always something that shows me a different side of myself
Yeah.
that I needed to see. Because once I see that side of myself, I can't unsee it. It's kind of like, your path, your the path that you saw you're supposed to be on when you were not quite sure what to do when you did your psychedelic journey. It's like that.
Mhm.
It's like I want to see what it is that I'm supposed to learn because I really want to learn it
Yeah.
so I can take it with me and go on to the next most beautiful thing. Not that I'm trying to rush through it, but I just
No,
want to
but
be open to
the more
receiving
you
it.
grow, and I think everybody would agree with this, the thing that happens is you even if you have a vision for the long-term thing, the next step is never clear until it's clear. And you can't make it happen. You can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
It's like
like,
walking on an invisible path. You
yeah.
can't see where the path is, but you're trusting that it's still
Yeah,
there,
and you just
and you
have
just
to
keep.
learn to lean into
Yeah,
knowing that this next decision's okay, and if you're like, "I don't know if it's okay," then that's where the fun comes in, and this is the most fun part of my coaching, is teaching people it's an adventure. You get it's nothing is a mess up. It's all an experiment. We're all trying on costumes. We're all playing in this video game of life,
yeah,
and it's all fun. Feel like it's not gonna be fun when you're in it sometimes, but, like, when you're in a movie and you're watching a movie and you're going through the suspenseful part, your body's tense, you're having an interaction, you might even cry, and then you leave the movie and you go out and you go, "Oh, that was so fun. It was such a good movie." Yeah,
yeah,
that's what we're in.
yeah.
Um, I know you're the interviewer. I wanna ask you a question. So, as you started experiencing these shifts, these highs and these lows and the
Mhm.
quicker moving through it, have you started to notice weird things in your body? You're like maybe shaking at times, you don't know why you're shaking, or
That's funny you say
weird
that.
symptoms.
I go to the gym 6 days a week.
Yeah.
I've had to take some time off from some injury,
Yeah.
so I really miss it because
Yeah.
that's a place where I really connect with myself,
Uh-huh.
and I really push myself to do something hard that I know is so good for me,
Right.
and it just I start every day with a workout, and it makes me feel, like, unstoppable the rest of the day
Yeah.
because I did that really hard thing first. But lately, I've been feeling really shaky, and I'm still drinking enough water, eating enough nutrient dense food. I'm nothing has changed that way, but I've noticed that my muscles, certain muscles in my body when I do certain workouts will
Mhm.
shake the whole time. And I never
Mm.
get to the stable point in my life.
Mhm.
However, while I'm working out, I've cried at the gym
Yeah.
multiple times.
Yeah.
I will
That's common.
stop
I
and
get that.
cry
Yeah. I love it.
because it's like my somatic work, right? I'm
Yes.
pushing my body and doing these things, and I
Yeah.
stop and I cry, and I let myself
Right.
cry because I think the gym is one of the most therapeutic things I've ever done for myself,
I love it.
and it's 95% my brain and 5% my body
Yeah.
because it really, really sets my brain right. I've learned a lot about myself since I've pushed myself to do hard things,
I love it.
and so those shakes, sometimes I don't know, and sometimes I'm like, I try and look it up, and nothing there makes sense. So I just go, this must just be something that I'm working through.
Well, I would even offer that the more you do this podcast and the kind of people that you're gonna be attracting, um, it wouldn't surprise me if you'll be laying in bed one day and just start
Thanks.
shaking.
No, no, truly, because like I
Yeah.
want to, I like being aware of where things are
Well, and
coming
what
from
I
and
would
what's
make of
happening.
that is your body, the energy in your body is shifting to be able to hold the energy that you are bringing to your work.
Hmm.
So, like, a lot of times, when I'll notice before I'm getting ready to work with a certain person, or take someone on a medicine journey or something like that. It's like my body will literally have to prepare to
Mm,
hold the energy of what's going to happen between the two of us.
yeah.
And that's not uncommon. So have fun. Don't make it a bad thing.
Yeah,
Your
it's not.
body is preparing to have more
It's all
capacity
feedback,
to
right?
move and hold more energy
Yeah,
to move it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's a good thing.
everything's feedback for me too. I'm looking for the lessons and all of the things
Yeah.
that I question, if
Yeah.
something brings up something for me, I'm like, "Hey, what is this? And what do I do with this? Or do
Yeah.
I do anything with
It's a
it?" Because
little weird
sometimes
sometimes because I'll be shaking in bed sometimes and I'm like, what is this about? Sometimes I don't know. And then what does come through is just like your body's releasing or
mm,
it's preparing to receive.
for me, I'll be laying in bed sometimes and I'll just go, and my
Yeah.
husband's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm just
Yeah.
processing."
That's
And
an autonomic response from your nervous system.
yeah,
That's a reset.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that happens on podcast days especially.
Uh-huh. That's an autonomic thing.
Yeah.
That's totally thank you, body.
Yeah. It feels good.
Yeah.
I don't fight it.
Yeah.
And all of those little things I'm like, "Oh, what is that one's weird."
Yeah.
But I always know it's just another way that my body's releasing something. It's almost
Mhm.
like energy's built up pressure and you have to kind of
Mhm.
release it and let it go
Well,
so
and
that
that's
you
the whole
can
thing is,
come back down.
the healthier you get, the more you have, like, keeping the flow going
Yeah.
instead of having a contraction and it stops.
Yeah.
It's trying to keep it in motion,
Yeah.
which is challenging sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it's been your whole life
Oh
and
yeah.
now you have a better awareness, perspective, and
Oh yeah.
understanding of what all of it is, what after years of being like confused,
Yeah.
confused about having big feelings, confused about feeling empathy for people I don't even know. Like I used to wonder like why aren't other people crying when they are in this situation?
Yeah.
And it's because I
This is your
just
gift.
yeah, my gift is that I get to feel at a level that others might not understand, and that's okay.
Right.
I used to be ashamed of it.
Right.
I used to be
Yeah.
ashamed of crying in public. I used to be ashamed of showing too much emotion because, we're
Mhm.
taught, oh, it's weakness, but
No,
it's my superpower.
it
And if
is.
it makes somebody else feel uncomfortable,
Eh.
I can't do anything with that. Like, this is just what it is. And
Yeah.
it's coming from a place of pure love and pure empathy and pure, I want to understand.
Yeah.
And so it just comes
Yeah.
and we let it come and we just wipe the tears away and keep moving because that's just who I am.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's such a gift, and you're
Thank
gonna
you.
keep I just wanna offer, I think it's gonna keep expanding, and you're gonna understand it more and more and more.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And especially as I do this work, and
Yeah,
especially as I talk to more and more people and hear more and more
yeah,
experiences. And
yeah. Because emotion is the one amazing gift of all the different energies and entities that exist in the universe. For humans, it's highly unique.
yeah,
Other entities and energies in the universe don't have the level of emotion that humans have, and humans actually can this is what we can harness for the divine
yeah,
if we learn how to work with it.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's, um,
I'm still figuring it out.
it makes me feel very special that I get to feel the way that I do
Oh
now.
yeah, yeah,
I've gone from shame to gratitude
that's beautiful.
because
I love it.
we have to
Uh-huh.
figure it out.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. So I want to know what 20 years of being with people and sitting with them in their hardest times has taught you about what human beings are actually capable of.
That's such a beautiful question. I love that. Um, the most powerful, I know it's going to sound so simplistic, the most powerful force for change is love.
Mm,
And if you're taught clinically in the traditional schools of therapy, you're not taught love. And so the more you learn love, the more you learn compassion, and especially your own self compassion as a therapist, the more that you can actually energetically convey that to your clients. That's the catalyst for change. And so I know that sometimes my capacity for love and my energetics just sitting in a chair without saying anything are actually going to be repellent to a client.
mhm.
They'll come in the room and go, "Oh, I can't see that therapist. She's icky." Like because their level of capacity to feel love is where it is.
Yeah.
And I get it now. And I'm just like, but the people I can treat and I like and I think that's the thing is you learn as a therapist over time that you call in who you're supposed to treat. And it has always worked that way for me. That's the level that I'm at. That's where how I work. Not everybody works that way.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that they're good or bad or I'm better or anything. It's just this is how I operate.
Yeah.
Is I can only work with those that are ready to work with me and those that I'm ready to work with. And so that means a lot of people maybe not want to see me, which is fine. I don't take it personally. I just
Mm,
know deep in my heart who's supposed to they're going to teach me. And I would say the last thing is that therapy is definitely a co-creation. If I'm not learning from my client, I'm not doing it right.
mm, yeah. Yeah, there has and we talked about this on our last podcast with our last guest is she said she went to therapy and I said, "Oh, so what did that look like? Did you find someone and go to them?" She's like, "Well, eventually I found someone." I'm like, "How many therapists did you talk to before you found your person?" And she said, "Like 3 or 4."
It
And I
takes
like to
yeah.
just really make sure that we keep saying that because
Yeah.
I think some people who've never experienced therapy, they go in and they're like, "Oh, I didn't like that." Well,
Right.
no, it's just not the right fit. It's
Right.
okay to not like one person. It's not a personal
Mhm.
thing. It's like you have to find the person who you can talk to
Yeah.
and you feel heard or you feel like your energy aligns with that person.
So important.
Because we talked about this also before the podcast is like sometimes you meet someone and you're instantly like this isn't going to work because
Mhm.
we're oil and water
Yep.
and we're just not going to see eye to eye and I'm not going to be able to help them. So that's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
But
Well, a lot of people sit in therapy and dismiss that feeling because they think, well, they're the expert, and then they deny their own
yeah,
experience because they don't know, and they'll sit in therapy too long, and that's actually not good for them.
like
So,
counterproductive
yeah,
almost.
so learning to listen to yourself is so important. And I would offer sometimes the most highly traumatized people really do need the more experienced therapist.
Yeah.
And you'll feel the difference. Um and it'll be your own unique fit. And like in the sexual addiction world, if somebody's coming for betrayal trauma healing or to recover from problematic sexual behavior, they have gone to 5 therapists to treat the problem previously. That's the average. And then for someone who's deeply ingrained in problematic sexual behavior, it's usually a 5-year journey of therapy. So like things take time, and you have to take it slow. And like I said, my journey with my helping my children heal, professional after professional, they were okay and skilled but mediocre at best. And I needed to find the right fit and the right professionals to really help my kids and
Yeah.
help myself. It
Yeah.
makes a difference. So you have to be patient with the process. But if you're really in the early stages of dealing with your trauma, you're terrified. You're afraid of what's gonna be open when you open what's gonna come out when you open the box.
Yeah.
And you're afraid that if once it's out of the box, you're never gonna recover from it because you feel like it's so damaging.
Yeah.
And, um, that's why it's hard to go find another therapist if one doesn't work out. You're like, "I opened the box a little bit, and that felt really gross, and I don't have the courage to open the box anymore."
Mm.
Um, I do wanna offer one last thing, and I hope this gets repeated over and over by your podcast and your platform and your AI tool, and I'm sure it's going to be said, but I do not believe in rip the band-aid off for trauma therapy. My psychedelics are a little bit of rip the band-aid off-ish. So like some people are ready for that, but I don't believe in ripping the band-aid off through psychedelics or plant medicine without proper support before and proper set and setting and with integration. The biggest, most important part of healing, especially with plant medicine or a medicine, is the integration. And that is not ripping the band-aid off. That
Right.
is continuously, gradually integrating what you learned and what it means to you. Good trauma therapy always is dipping the toe in the pond and stepping out. Never jumping in for a full swim. If you jump in for a full swim, you might do that through plant medicine or through like electromagnetic shock therapy, or these very extreme measures, right? Ketamine therapy. That's a lot like taking that full jump in the pond and swimming. But afterwards, there might be a recovery phase needed where there's a lot of gentle holding and a lot of gentle integration of understanding. So, good trauma treatment always is a little bit of experience and then moving away from it and integrating. A little bit more experience and widening the experience and moving away from it and integrating.
Yeah.
It's never just jumping in and staying in the intensity.
Well, because it usually didn't happen that way. So you kind of almost have to
Right.
unwind what happened, and it's usually layered, right? And it's
Well,
usually
yes, there's that, but for a lot of people, there's also this nervous system thing for some people where their trauma was intense, and it was like their life was nothing but intensity after intensity after intensity, and so their nervous system actually acclimates to intensity and says, "Oh, that's what life is." And so when you're doing trauma therapy that's gentle and soft, it feels like this isn't helping. And but you don't want it's the whole thing of like to have energy move and flow through you rather than being contracted and get stuck and then big release.
Mhm.
Like what helps us have longevity in life is the ability to have this flexible flow of energy, which is a flexible flow of how we heal from trauma. It's like a little bit and then like it's this dance of moving energy. And that helps our body have resilience.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
I love that. You use the word that we love to use, resilience,
yes,
because we as humans are so resilient.
right.
And, we've talked about this the whole time is like, I don't know if we talked about this at the beginning of the podcast or before, but you talked about how therapists used to think, oh, you're this way, this is who you are. We're going to let you learn, we're going to teach you how to cope
Oh,
with
the
who
trauma
you are.
healing. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of our brains have neuroplasticity and we
Mhm.
can make change. We can move through certain patterns or behaviors to a better pattern or behavior for ourselves
Right.
that's more healthy and more productive for ourselves.
Yeah. And I would call it like self soothing skills,
Yeah.
right? Or it's not always self soothing, it's self management. Like I said,
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm having big feelings. Do I want them? Can I have them? Can I move through them? What happens when I have big feelings? you know?
Yeah, and it's understanding that if you can be moved to this traumatic state, you can be moved back out from the traumatic state to a better state. You'll never be the same again. You can move to a better place where
Hmm.
now you can take this as a catalyst to just propel yourself to the most beautiful life that you could ever
Oh,
imagine.
for sure. And your capacity is so much
Bigger.
more.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And
This
thanks
was
for
fun.
sharing all of your insights. And I'm going to have you back
Oh,
because I know that there's more stuff there that we can talk about that will really, really help
yeah.
our audience and help people to really understand themselves a little better.
Okay.
We'll dip their toe in again
All
in the
right.
future a
Thanks.
little
I'd
bit.
love that. That'd be fun.
Thank you again, Lisa, so much for being
Lovely
here
to meet you. It's great to be here.
and sharing your story and
Thanks.
being vulnerable. Thank you for joining us today on the Irene Cares podcast. God bless.